Hi everybody, welcome back to In the Cards and Stars. I'm your host, Madrid Mogensen, and we are reporting from Park City, Utah, which is also the place where I actually have 5 power lines in astrocartography. If you don't know what the heck that means, you guys need to join the members only group because I'm actually working on a vlog where I'm going to be showing you guys what these different lines mean, and you're going to see astrology in action, like in the wild, what happens when you travel to certain lines. And this is kind of the perfect place for me to show you guys because there's a lot of activity here. There's a lot going on. So I'm really excited to share that with the members and teach you guys how to use astrocartography in your travels. But today we are going to be getting into a couple of pop culture moments and 2 celebrities that you would really never put in the same category who actually have a lot in common astrologically. We're going to be exploring that. So we're going to talk about Martha Stewart, oh my gosh, and her documentary Martha, so buckle up for that. And then we're going to get into Shawn Mendes' new album, Shawn, which he released on the Taurus full moon. Very interesting. There's a lot going on there to get into. So why don't we start with Martha's birth chart and let's just dive right in. Okay, so Martha Stewart, the documentary. Have you guys seen this? Number one, like there is so much to talk about. Sage Moon, our wonderful tea timer, recommended this to me. I was on the fence about watching it. So glad I did. Thank you, Sage Moon, because there is so much astrology at play here. And I just don't even know where to start. Okay, let's look at the very obvious Virgo energy, her Virgo North Node, her Venus in Virgo. As we know about Virgo energy, this is the zodiac sign associated with work, the 6th house, which is the house of work and healing, day-to-day activities. And Martha Stewart, on a very positive note, she actually transformed the way that women thought about their day-to-day lives, making their home beautiful. Venus in Virgo, a love of work, a love of the home, a love of your daily routines, things that typically can seem, quite boring. Virgo loves those things. Virgo loves the details. And when I was watching her documentary, immediately I was like, I need a birth chart in front of me because this is giving so much Virgo energy. They really highlighted her perfectionistic streak. They had like a million clips of different people saying perfect, like talking about her work. It was kind of overwhelming, right? And I think that was what they wanted you to feel as a viewer, just completely overwhelmed by this attention to detail, this almost OCD like perfectionistic streak. And that is dark Virgo energy. If you have Virgo in your birth chart or you know anybody with Virgo in the birth chart, you know that that is something that Virgo energy struggles with. It's this desire to be perfect versus this very real sense of chaos. A lot of Virgos are actually very chaotic, but they have a desire to keep it all together. And as a Virgo sun can confirm, okay? So Martha, she actually talks about how she's not perfect. She's very imperfect. I liked the realness. I will say I liked the realness, but the reality of just how hard she has tried over the years to present a perfect picture, I think that's what bothers people. It's definitely what rubbed me the wrong way. Also, she was asked, what are your dislikes? What do you dislike? Here's what she said. Red, waste, inefficiency, avoidance, impatience, people not paying attention to details, being mean just to be mean, aprons, and house dresses. Okay, so in my notes I wrote insufferable voice notes. So it's a lot. She's a lot, okay? And it's interesting to me that she's also, wound up alone. Her love life, her family life, it does seem that all of these things have suffered while she has been in this relentless pursuit of perfection, of success, of finances. And she has her moon, which is your emotions, what you love. It's not surprising that she has her moon in the 2nd house, the house of money and self-esteem. So her emotions are very much tied to her ability to make money and work. She's not very maternal. She's not really, warm and fuzzy. And here's something that she said about her pursuit of success that I thought was pretty interesting. And with Shawn Mendes, I thought of him because it's really similar, the things that he was exploring and that he's talked about with this new album, Shawn. Both of them have a Virgo North node and a Pisces South node. But this is such a great example, like a little case study, of how two people can have very similar life paths, life purposes, destinies in astrology, which is your North node, that's what you're pushing towards, and how people can pursue them so differently. But what's interesting is they both are in this pursuit of balance between perfectionism and like the need to be real and the need to experience emotions. Okay, anyway, so here's what Martha had to say about her relentless pursuit of career. So in the Netflix documentary Martha reflects on her relentless pursuit of career success and its impact on her personal happiness. She acknowledges that her dedication to build her business often took precedence over personal relationships, including her marriage to Andrew Stewart, who we did a tarot reading on last time we did our live stream. Martha admits to having an affair during their marriage, stating, "I don't think Andy ever knew about that," which he did, by the way. She also discussed her husband's infidelities and the eventual breakdown of their marriage, expressing that she was furious and brokenhearted when Andrew asked for a divorce. Despite these personal challenges, Martha emphasizes that her commitment to her work was a driving force in her life, leading to her success as a self-made billionaire. She reflects on the sacrifices made in her personal life, suggesting that her focus on career achievements sometimes came at the expense of her personal happiness. I will say she really relied on her career for all of her happiness. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to Martha's childhood. Astrologically, it just makes sense. So her childhood was very much influenced by dark Sagittarius energy, where she has her Sagittarius moon. Your moon sign is oftentimes thought of a reflection of your relationship with your mother, but it can also be a reflection of your relationship with the parent that you're closest to, or the one that you want love from the most. The moon is like our emotions. And she talked about her father a lot in the beginning of the documentary. I mean, all of her childhood was really about her relationship with her father. And she talked about how she was the most like him out of all the kids. She also said that she was his favorite. Okay, Martha, go on with your bad self. She's like, I'm the best, everyone loves me. She doesn't lack confidence, I'll say that. But what was interesting is that she also had a very dark, troubling relationship with her father, who struggled with alcoholism, abuse, trigger warning, this is very dark, this is very sad, abuse, and was also always pushing them to work in the garden, to the point where one of her siblings said that they never wanted to see another garden in their life because it wasn't like a place of joy for them. It was a way for them to actually eat and get food, because like her father struggled to keep a job, struggled to keep food on the table. She said he was very smart, but that he always was below, like he achieved below his potential. It just seems like he was a very difficult man, very troubling. She also called him a bigot, citing an incident that occurred when she got engaged to her husband, who was Jewish. She was so excited, she told her father about how she was engaged, and he slapped her across the face. I mean, horrible. So I was pretty shocked to hear her speak so fondly about her father, to really love gardening. It's really interesting because it seems like Martha tried to make everything perfect that was imperfect. Again, something that Virgo energy has to really look out for. You have to feel your feelings, Pisces energy. So every single zodiac sign has an opposite pole, right? So it's like two sides of the same energy. And Shawn Mendes actually really discusses this beautifully, which when we get there, I'm excited to share some stuff that he said. So the pole, the opposite of Virgo, is Pisces. And, Pisces is emotional, intuitive, unstructured, deep. It's just all about swimming in feelings. And too much of that can be destabilizing, right? It can also lead into things like addiction and just complete free-for-all kind of energy, okay? And then Virgo, on the other hand, is structure, work, health, healing, goodness, but in a way that is very practical, beautifying things in a very practical, attention to detail type of way, stable, earth energy. So if you can actually take two sides of that coin, and you can mix them together in a very balanced way. You can have someone who expresses emotion, but within the boundaries, within the boundaries of also being able to function in life. Someone who is healing, but not to the expense of themselves. Pisces is about universal love and also, creativity and love of like self-expression. So if you can balance these two poles, you really do have a nice mix of someone who is both self-possessed and functional in society, but also empathetic and creative. So we see Martha in this documentary really go through this pursuit of the North Node, but what I think she failed to do is take her South Node gifts with her. And we have talked about this when we've looked at other people's birth charts and how, your South Node, so look up your South Node if you haven't already, it's really important to know, these are like your natural skills. These are the things that you've come into this life already knowing. It's just kind of what you're good at, and these things tend to come to you naturally. You don't really have to go out looking for them. So when you have that, as you pursue your North Node, the best way to go about it is to take those South Node gifts and then learn your North Node skills and just kind of build step by step. So if you want to go from Pisces South Node to Virgo North Node, you're going to understand that you have emotions, you have needs, you're a creative person, but you need to integrate more structure into your life. You may need to be more balanced with your daily routine. You may gravitate towards doing things like beautifying your home, like being an entrepreneur, work, just, animals. Those are ruled by the 6th house. So you may just decide, I'm going to work on being more productive, more structured, but you do these things like a little at a time, right? With Martha, we see that, and I think this is because of her childhood, honestly, we see that she took all these difficult things, and rather than move through them, it's sort of like she threw them out the window and was like, emotions, I don't need those. Creativity, only if it's in service of perfection. And we see that she really leaned hard into her Virgo North Node, almost from the onset of adulthood. So I think that's interesting to just take note of and to look at in our own lives, because anything too extreme it's not good, right? We have to balance. So, okay, that's interesting. Another thing that I noticed about just kind of like her childhood and what she went through, if we look at her birth chart and we see that, like I said, her moon is in Sagittarius in the 2nd house of money and work. Also, her moon is associated with the parent that she was closest to, her father, who she described as bigoted and, like to drink, and someone who is very much in their head, in their own thoughts. Dark Sagittarius energy is the philosopher, and bigoted energy, when you take your belief system and you think that you're the only one that's right, and you use that to harm others. I think that's kind of like what a bigot is, That is dark Sagittarius energy, because Sagittarius is the world traveler, the person who kind of lives in the mind. They can also be separate from reality, from the day-to-day. A love of ideas, a love of learning on the bright side, but on the darker side, there is something that's not very grounded about Sagittarius energy. And because of her father not being able to provide and possibly living too much in his head and not grounding his skills, because Martha said he was very smart, but never really lived up to his potential in day-to-day life, couldn't provide for his family. It seems to me like that whole thing is actually what pushed her from the very beginning to start working as a model at a very young age, making $15 an hour, which she would give to her parents to be able to feed their family. Oh, that broke my heart. I was like, she really never got a chance to be a child. She really didn't. And so we can see how when we look at the way that her childhood sort of shaped her, she never really broke through that. It seems like she just kept living out that pattern. So it's interesting. I feel like you can judge people and then you look at their birth chart and you look at what they've been through and then you're like, okay, I have empathy for that, right? Okay, Martha's love life. Now this part was the hardest to stomach, to be honest with you guys. This was where I went from empathy to being like, oh my, this is a lot, okay? I believe that one of our tea time friends, Sage Moon, said wolf in sheep's clothing, and I felt that. I really felt that when I watched this documentary. So oh my gosh, where do we begin? With her love life, I do not think that Martha is a very, we've already said that she's not super nurturing. She did talk about how motherhood didn't come naturally to her. She really didn't enjoy spending time with her daughter, which that's kind of sad, obviously. It just seemed like she always wanted to sort of escape, right? And like do big things, talk to people about ideas. She doesn't like talking about feelings, she said. Okay. And I'm telling you, that's dark Sagittarius moon. Sagittarius, it is a love of like books, ideas, and really, fire sign energy. Fire and water don't mix. Water in astrology is associated with feelings. She just is not, does she have any water in her? The only water that she has in her chart is her Scorpio rising. And I would have to say that Scorpio is like the most intense of the water sign energies. Okay, so there's not a lot of softness. Not a lot. She does have her Mercury in Cancer. But again, Mercury is associated with thinking, not feeling. So she can think about feelings, but it's not like she really expresses feelings. I don't know how deep she even experiences feelings, to be honest, after watching this documentary. I can't diagnose her, but there's something going on. So the first thing that was kind of a red flag was that when she described meeting her husband, she talked about him being handsome, but she also talked about his car being a Mercedes. She talked about how he had an American Express card. And then she said by the end of their first dinner date, she was already in love. I'm like, okay, Martha. So I think she was really looking for someone to take her out of her, her rough life, her rough upbringing. And I think that he was just sort of the perfect cookie cutter person. The idea of perfection, thinking about, what would just be so Virgo North Node, so Venus and Virgo, so perfect picture. And I think he fit the bill. That's what it looked like to me. Because then she talks about her honeymoon, and she kissed another man on her honeymoon in Florence, Italy. What are you doing, ma'am? Okay, and then the way that she describes it. So, okay, let's say that she did that. She was in her 20s at the time. I don't think she'd had a lot of boyfriends or whatever by this point. Now, as like I think 80-something-year-old woman, when you're talking about this, wouldn't you think that you would be like remorseful or like, that was really terrible, at the time you would think that you would kind of acknowledge or explain, or have some sort of feeling of guilt. She has zero feelings of guilt. She talked about how it was just, it was just emotional. They asked her, one of the people, the person off camera, like I don't know if it was like the director or someone interviewing her was like, so did you feel like that was infidelity or that was something like naughty that you were doing or whatever? And she said, it was just emotional. It was just emotional. It was the moment, and then I thought, oh my gosh, dark Sagittarius moon. She was in Florence, Italy, foreign country. If you know anything about Sagittarius, you know that they tend to either meet someone in a foreign country, marry someone in a foreign country, have a love of everything foreign. So I'm like, okay, this is a dark expression of Sagittarius moon and rationalizing for the sake of maintaining your freedom, because Sagittarius loves freedom above all. Just saying. Okay, so that was really bad. That was really, really bad. So there was that to start with. Then her husband ended up having an affair with a woman that worked for Martha who was having financial troubles, and then Martha invited her to come live in their home. Now, based on everything that we learned about Martha in the documentary, I didn't get a real big feeling of like altruism from her. I wonder if she invited the woman to come live with her so that maybe she could have more access to her, so the woman could get more done. Like, that's kind of what I feel. And then she was absolutely shocked, devastated, and angered when her husband, they were very unhappy. Martha, was very difficult to live with. It sounds like not kind, not nurturing, just kind of rough, I think, to be either her spouse or her child. So her husband's unhappy, okay, and then Martha finds out that they are having an affair. This woman that she's invited to come live with her, who is basically like her assistant, starts having an affair with her husband. She finds out and she's devastated. She's so angry. And she talks about it in the documentary, and she even has a hard time speaking about it. So she tells the director, I can't talk about this anymore. I gave you the letters. Please read the letters. So it's like the letters. You guys have to watch this if you haven't already. The letters are up on screen. and she even like threatens to burn down the house. I mean, it's giving Scorpio ascendant, like she's about to go scorched earth. Like it was intense. So then they ask her, hold on, I gotta find this quote here. This is just too much. Martha candidly discusses her own infidelities during her marriage to Andrew Stewart. When a producer points out that she had an affair early on, I mean, in Florence, she literally kisses someone on her honeymoon, right? And then she also had an affair with what she called an attractive Irishman when she was working on Wall Street. She's had 9 lives. By the way, that's very Scorpio ascendant. Many eras, like Taylor Swift, also Scorpio rising. Many eras, okay? Martha had many iterations of herself. So when asked about how she also had an affair, she was saying she was so angry and stuff, he was like, well, you know, you had one too. And she says, yeah, but I don't think Andy ever knew about that, emphasizing that it was a fleeting encounter that would never have broken up a marriage. So it's like, she basically just said, but what I did would never have broken up a marriage, and he didn't know about that. Then the producer says, yes, he did. He told me that you actually confessed to him. And then she acted like she didn't understand. She was like, what? Like, I don't think so. So she's like just rationalization, denial. I mean, so that makes her very unlikable, okay? And I was pretty shocked that there just seems to be no self-awareness, absolutely zero. And she paints herself as the victim throughout. So that was one of the things that I found very unattractive about her personality. Now, on the brighter side, I guess, you know, everyone has certain gifts, and it is quite an accomplishment to be the first ever female self-made billionaire. I mean, that's a huge deal, especially from where she came from, having to work for $15 an hour to put food on the table for herself and her family. So that's an amazing accomplishment, but it does seem like it came at the expense of really getting to experience any sort of emotional happiness. So when we're looking at the Pisces South Node, Virgo North Node polarities, it makes me very sad to see that she really, even at this age, you know, as she reflects on her life, it seems like she's still missing the plot. You know, she's not really getting the point. So I don't know, that's a little sad. A couple of other things, just notable mentions here about her birth chart and some revelations that came through in this documentary. When we look at her career, we see that she's a Scorpio rising, Venus in Virgo, North Node. You know, Venus on the North Node, it makes the pursuit of your highest self, who you're meant to be in this life. Venus there makes it very attractive. So there's almost like this joy and beauty that comes along with pursuing your North Node. And I wonder if that's why maybe she went too far, because Venus energy, you know, if you overdo it, it's like anything. You eat too much cake, your stomach's gonna hurt. It's like she kind of just pursued that Virgo North Node a little bit too hard. And it did isolate a lot of people. It did give her a really bad reputation. I don't think that she's close to many people, which is very lonely. Also, the transformation element of having a Scorpio ascendant, she's just had so many different, it's like 9 lives. She was a stockbroker, a model, media mogul. Let's see, what else? You know, a criminal. And that was an era no one saw coming. And then now it seems like she's in this phase of just like reflecting and making these documentaries and wanting to be out in the public in a new way, kind of like a little redemption arc, along with Snoop Dogg being her BFF. I mean, what an unlikely pairing. But I just think that it's interesting, and she seems a little bit more likable, I think, when she shares her emotional hardships. Like towards the end of the documentary, when she's talking about her relationship with Snoop Dogg and how she went and was on like a celebrity roast and she was able to laugh at herself. I think that that's why some people kind of embraced her a little bit more, because it's just not fun to be around someone that takes things a little bit too seriously. Someone who just walls off their emotions. That's not fun. We're all human. So I do think that we see a little bit more of her humanness poking out, but there's still a lot of denial there. And then when it comes to motherhood and being a homemaker, something interesting about her is that, you know, her Mercury is in Cancer, so you would think maybe she'd be very nurturing, because Cancer is the zodiac sign associated with motherhood or fatherhood. And her daughter actually said that they had a very cold home, that she doesn't have like a lot of fond memories of their home. And Martha admitted that motherhood didn't come naturally to her. She also got pregnant at 19. I don't think she had really experienced much of life. It was just kind of like doing what everybody did at that time. And that seemed like a very sad kind of experience for her and for her daughter. She just doesn't seem even comfortable with emotions, which is definitely a rejection of that Pisces South Node. Also, we see that sometimes if you have Mercury in Cancer, not only is it thinking about emotions, but it can be overly intellectualizing emotions, when really emotions have to be felt. And then with Venus and Virgo, that is a love of structure. So I just think she found so much solace in structure. Also, people talked about how she's just difficult, and they show a bunch of clips of her, getting mad at this one woman that's working in the kitchen and cutting something with a knife. And I guess she had a knife that Martha thought was like too small, and she really kind of goes in on her. And then she says something like, you're gonna have to cut this. Well, the director left it in. And by the way, Martha's mad about this documentary, of course. Nothing will probably ever be good enough for Martha's taste, But she goes in on her about this knife, and it's a lot. It's a lot to watch. It's pretty gross. And I think that's Mars and Aries, because Aries is the warrior, the fighter, and Mars is the ruler of Aries. So she has Mars and Aries. I mean, she's like wolf in sheep's clothing, 1000%. Perfect way to describe her. Also, Chiron is in Leo and midheaven is in Leo. To have Chiron on the midheaven is your public persona. Leo is associated with fame. So this indicates someone who will experience their trauma in the spotlight. And I do think that her greatest trauma, that she does talk about being like the hardest thing in her life, was being convicted and having to become like an inmate. And she went to solitary confinement once, and like it was a lot. She said it was very like humiliating and really a difficult time. And that's Chiron and Leo, experiencing a fall from grace on the midheaven, so in public. So I do think that she had to be humbled. Very interesting. I highly recommend watching it, and I think in the light of her birth chart, we definitely see a lot of astrology at play. It's pretty amazing. Oh, last thing, Jupiter in Gemini. She's having her Jupiter return right now. So if you're wondering, why now? Why this documentary now? I wondered that. Well, right now, Jupiter is in Gemini through, the summer of 2025. And so this is when her energy is expanding, basically. Like, if you have Jupiter in Gemini, the spotlight's on you right now. So she is just having this period of increased success. So I hope she uses it wisely. Okay, moving on to Shawn Mendes. Okay, this was such an anticipated album release. Just everyone was so excited about this coming out, and I listened to the whole album this morning and I loved it. I really think this is so good. It's very different from its earlier work, but it's so good. And I watched an interview that Shawn did with Apple Music's Zane Lowe. You can tell they also have like a personal friendship. So it was a really good interview. He was really comfortable. I highly recommend watching that if you guys want to explore some of these insights a little bit deeper, because it's just, he really does open up and talk about the different songs and his experiences. And in light of his birth chart, again, makes so much sense. So I'm going to pull up his chart. Okay, so for Shawn Mendes, he also has a Pisces South Node, Virgo North Node. But interestingly enough, when I was watching this interview that he did, I was like, this is weird. These are the same themes as Martha Stewart. And then that's when I kind of was like looking and comparing their birth charts to each other. Because whereas Martha really embraced her Virgo North Node, we can see that Shawn at 26 years old has already been through that. And he opens up and talks about how that is the whole reason that he actually stepped away from his career. When he did that, he was able to reconnect with his emotions, with who he really is. And this album is basically like an exploration of that. He talks a lot about people pleasing and this overly perfectionistic streak that he has. Very Martha. But I think that for Shawn, because he's so sensitive, he has his Jupiter in Pisces. He also has his Chiron in Scorpio, which is, needing to uncover and reveal your true self. So I do think that that helps him in a way, because it's almost like he has had to reveal his true self. He's had to go deeper and like do a little bit more self-analysis, which is probably really painful and difficult, but I do think that it's helped him to overcome that overly, rigid archetype of Virgo that we see Martha really kind of just has a stronghold on her. He really goes into how he's in a totally different place right now, and releasing this album, he's realized that the external is a reflection of the internal. So for me, that's really marrying the Pisces, internal, and the Virgo external. I think he's blending the energies, guys. I think he's doing a good job of it. And he said that little by little, he's been figuring out how he can actually work in this industry and show up and not lose himself. He talks about his tendency to people please, to try to be perfect, to deny his own feelings, his own reality, and how honesty and transparency and living in the moment and not overly focusing on the outcome or the product is where he's at right now. And I was like, that's the opposite of Martha. Like, wow. He also said, I realized that life is happening now, not in the future. And I'm learning that if I don't try to change it to make it feel a certain way, if I can actually be honest, then that's actually, living and enjoying his life. He also said he got to a point where he was just tired of not being authentic anymore. He wasn't able to relax or be himself, and he started to have a lot of mental health issues, which is why he called off his tour. Now he's getting back into it, but slowly, and he even expressed that no matter how this album is received, he is still excited to put it out. He's really trying to let go of how other people think about him and putting too much importance on that. But he also acknowledges that he's human and how, everybody cares about what others think of them to some extent. And I mean, wow, these are literally the exact same things that Martha was talking about. I just found that so interesting. Just such an astrology in the wild moment of finding the balance between Pisces and Virgo energy. Also, he talked about how choosing yourself and being honest is like the most important thing to him right now, and how it's actually really doing a disservice to the people around you if you aren't showing up authentically. And he talked about his breakup with Camila a little bit. He talked about how he came out on stage and revealed that he's still figuring out his sexuality. That's very Chiron and Scorpio, just revealing something that you feel is a dark hidden part of your personality, because for a long time he actually fought against people who were speculating about his sexuality, and that's a very personal thing, right? So he doesn't have to share that, but for Shawn, with that Chiron and Scorpio, the most healing thing for him is to be honest about his emotions and in the way that he is embracing the parts of himself that he has rejected in the past or that others may reject about him. So I really think he's living his birth chart beautifully. He's also entering into a 7 personal year in 2025. 7 is the most spiritual year, and the stuff that he was talking about in this interview, we do start to feel our next year's cycle come in at the end of the previous year. So, right now we're watching this in like November. Yeah, I can feel the energy coming in of that 7 year and him really showing more and more of his true self, which is, I think, very spiritual, very intellectual, very honest, and that's all associated with 7 energy. So I've been talking about for a long time that I think 2025 is going to be a really good year for him, and I already am starting to see that with this album, with this interview. It was just so good. It was really so good. So you guys have to watch it if you haven't already. I love to see this because you can tell he's just done so much healing and so much inner work. And they also talk about his friendship with Camila, which I thought was really nice, because we finally get a little bit more clarity around just how difficult that was for him to be really honest with her, but how it was necessary because he needed to be alone to find himself. He's been in the industry since he was 15 years old, right? So he never really got a chance to figure out who he is. He was always just trying to live up to an expectation or, do what he thought he needed to do. Working from the age of 15 and with such a high pressure environment, I can't imagine, I wouldn't have been able to handle it personally. I don't know many people that could. So I think it's great that he took this break. He's spent a lot of time figuring out his emotions and reconnecting with his true self. He also talked about an experience that he had in creating the song Heart of Gold, which is a really beautiful song. And that's about his friend Diomi, who passed away when he was 18. I think they were friends since they were like, younger, like in their early teens. And when he first received the phone call when he was about 18 years old that his friend had passed away, he said that he didn't feel anything, that he was just like numb. And it wasn't until he went to write this song in the recording studio, and one of the producers asked him, like, hey, didn't you have a friend that passed away? And he said his first instinct was just to say, like, he was like, no, I didn't. And he said then he thought about it and realized that he actually did have a friend that passed away, and that he just had this complete outpouring of like grief. And he said that previously he'd always thought that he was weird, and he was like shocked by his initial reaction to the horrible, news of his friend's passing. But now, he said, since he's done all this work on himself, gotten back in touch with his emotions, he said it was like he finally like processed all those feelings. And then he created this song, Heart of Gold, about his friend. Like, oh, it was so beautiful. And to me, that is really him, like, being in that Virgo North Node energy, embracing that energy, feeling like he needs to be that perfect, in the box, perfect person and do everything exactly right. Almost to protect himself from the Pisces South Node emotions. I feel like having a Pisces South Node is probably one of the more challenging ones because you can feel overwhelmed by emotion, right? And so I'm not blaming, oh my gosh, all of our birth charts, we've got stuff, right? So not judging or blaming anyone who temporarily runs from the Pisces South Node emotions. But I think that with Shawn Mendes and with what he's had to say about his experience of the South and North nodes, I love that he actually was able to go back and reclaim, the positive, useful parts of the Pisces energy from his South Node and feel his emotions and express them with this beautiful outpouring of love and art and self-acceptance and spreading all these messages of honesty and truth. And like, I really love it. So good. Love the album, love the interview. And last point that I want to make about this is that I was wondering, why did he release this album on the very potent last supermoon of the year in Taurus, the Taurus full moon on the 15th, like exact to the day. So I was like trying to find in his birth chart where he may have any sort of planets that correspond or reflect with this full moon. And he has his Saturn in Taurus. So Saturn is like hard work. So to have this full moon conjunct his hard work, Taurus energy, Saturn energy, I think that this is like a reward in a way for the hard work that he's done, like revealing the hard work that he's done, basically revealing all of his growth. So I feel like this was like a very symbolic thing for him. And he does talk about how this album was like a gift to himself and like very healing. So I love that. A lot of stability there. Also, his Chiron in Scorpio is directly, Scorpio and Taurus are opposite poles, just like Pisces and Virgo. So it's about balancing those two energies. So for him to heal his Chiron wound in Scorpio, a fear of like, a fear of self-destruction, a fear of revealing too much about yourself, a fear of like taboo things or people thinking, just afraid to show your darkness, feeling like you need to be perfect all the time, afraid of your own intensity at times. It's a lot. It's a heavy placement. So for this full moon in Taurus to be shining opposite his Scorpio and Chiron and conjunct his Saturn in Taurus, I feel like symbolically this really does show that this was a moment for him of revealing all of the healing that he's done, all of the hard work that he's put in. And truly it is the start of a new era for him. Once Pluto moves into Aquarius, it's also going to be opposite his Leo sun and opposite his, and conjunct his Neptune in Aquarius, also conjunct his Uranus and Aquarius moon. We're about to see a full new chapter of him expressing positive side of Leo energy, which is going to be very balanced with Aquarian energy, and really reveal his true self, his true ideas, his moon, which is his emotions, Uranus, his innovative side, and Neptune, which is the higher octave of Venus, which is very, very creative. So I think he's moving towards his North Node, and this album is just so beautiful. So, okay, loved it. So interesting. Loved both of these works of art and getting to explore them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in another all new episode next week. And yeah, send you guys big hugs. And don't forget, if you guys want to see that members only video, be sure you subscribe to the members only over on YouTube. We're going to be talking about astrocartography this week, and I'm really excited because this has been some major astrology in the wild moments as well. All right, love you guys.